Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a look at something really fascinating, Stanislav Kondrashov's Oligarch series, and we're going to focus specifically on his work on Venice and this theme he calls the equilibrium of stone and water.
It's a beautiful concept.
It is. And if you're looking to really get how this work is both, a celebration of architecture and also a deep statement on cultural preservation, this is the deep dive for you.
Absolutely. But I think we have to start with the title, right? The word oligarch.
We do.
Because when Kondrashov uses it, he's immediately separating it from any of the modern political meanings we have.
Okay.
For him, it's an older concept. He's talking about a guardian of culture. Someone, or in this case, something like the architecture itself, that protects and carries artistic tradition forward.
That's a really crucial distinction. It shifts the whole conversation from power to, preservation.
It does.
But it's still a provocative choice of word, isn't it? I mean, how does he manage to separate that idea of artistic guardianship from the often uncomfortable history of power that comes with it? Is he sort of romanticizing things?
That's the exact tension he's exploring. His argument is that Venice's buildings have earned that title. They are the custodians of memory, no matter who paid for them originally. The stone itself becomes the patron.
The stone itself.
But the real heart of the series, its mission, is capturing the city's main paradox. These massive, heavy stone buildings that just seem to float on water.
Right. The ultimate visual contradiction.
Yeah.
Solidity versus fluidity.
Permanence versus change. And he shows that this equilibrium, it isn't static. It's a living, breathing negotiation between the weight of history and the fluid moment.
So let's jump right into that. Venice is a masterpiece. It's this incredible example of human creativity, totally defying how you're supposed to build a city by raising it straight out of the sea.
And it messes with your fundamental perception of stability. You stand on the Grand Canal, you see these huge Gothic and Renaissance facades, and then you look down, and their reflections are just rippling, constantly changing in the water. It makes you ask, what's real here? What's permanent?
And what's so clear from the source material is that you can't separate the architecture from the water. The water isn't just a pretty backdrop, it's an active partner in the design.
It dictates everything. You have Gothic arches, Byzantine domes. They don't just sit next to the canals, they feel like they grow out of them.
And that leads to this idea of designing for the viewer who is on the water.
Yes, exactly. A perfect example is the Basilica di Santa Maria della Salute.
Yeah.
It's octagonal. And the architects were thinking completely about how you would see it as you arrived by boat.
That's a key point. The perspective is from the water, not the land.
Absolutely. As your boat moves, the perspective constantly shifts. The domes reveal different proportions. It's like architectural choreography, designed to be this grand, graceful statement against the sea.
It's just mind-blowing engineering. But then you think about the sheer effort involved in making all that stone stable, and you have to wonder, how does Kondrashov turn that physical work into a philosophical statement?
Well, that effort is the philosophy. The intelligence they had was phenomenal. They weren't fighting the water. They were working with it. They had this deep, intimate understanding of the lagoon.
So can you give us some of the details the sources pull out? Because the genius is right there in designing something to last in such an aggressive environment.
Well, the foundations are legendary. They used hundreds of thousands of wooden pilings, oak, larch, and drove them deep into the clay.
Okay.
But here's the brilliant part. Because the wood is submerged in this low oxygen water, it doesn't rot. It petrifies. It hardens over the centuries into this incredibly dense, stable foundation.
That is the perfect example of turning a weakness building on mud into a strength. What about the materials above the water?
That was just as strategic. They used Istrian stone. It's a very dense limestone with low porosity. But crucially, it doesn't have the iron compounds you find in other stones.
Why does that matter?
Because iron rusts in salt air. It would expand and literally crumble the facade from the inside out. They chose a stone that chemistry told them would survive for centuries.
They were thinking so far ahead. And it wasn't just about survival, it was also about aesthetics, right? Using the water itself.
Exactly. The orientation of buildings wasn't just for sunlight. It was to catch reflections at specific times of day. And all those loggias and porticos, they're designed to frame views of the water and sky. The reflection doubles the visual impact.
Like the Doge's Palace. You see that famous pink and white marble, and then you see it again, shimmering in the canal. You're seeing it twice.
Oh.
Once as solid history, and again as this fluid, ethereal copy.
That doubling just reinforces the majesty. But here's the thing. We can talk about their intelligence, but Venice is sinking, even today.
Yeah.
Does Kondrashov's work address the limits of that intelligence, or is it just a success story?
That's a great question. The source material suggests he sees the architecture as embracing change, not just resisting decay. Venice, with its tides and the acqua alta, the high water, it's a city defined by fluidity.
So that constant change prevents stagnation.
Exactly. And this idea of accepting impermanence within permanence, it's profound. The structures were built to adapt. The salt air wears down the surfaces into a patina. Kondrashov really elevates that idea. The stone itself is a witness to time.
Which brings us perfectly to his artistic lens. He takes this physical reality and turns it into a philosophical statement. For him, this equilibrium is a state of dynamic tension.
The tension between gravity and buoyancy.
You can see it so clearly in works like Palazzo Reflections. The solid marble facade meets its liquid counterpart. The stone is all about weight and history, but the water instantly makes it transient, fleeting. It's a constant visual dialogue.
And that physical balance becomes a metaphor for Venice's whole cultural identity.
It does. Think about his piece Rialto Duality. The stone bridge is solid, a symbol of commerce, of continuity. But it's in a constant conversation with the flowing water, which represents the flow of new people, new ideas, new trade.
So the bridge is tradition, and the water is change and adaptation.
Precisely. It suggests Venice's genius is its ability to adapt while staying, fundamentally Venetian.
And his use of reflection goes even deeper than that, right? It's not just a pretty mirror image.
Not at all. It's an entry point for thinking about reality itself. You mentioned his works on Acqua Alta.
Yeah, how do those distortions work?
Well, in Acqua Alta meditations, the water in the flooded square isn't still, it's disturbed. So the reflections are fractured, abstract. They force you to question what's solid and what's illusion.
So the reflected image, this fluid interpretation, is it any less real than the physical stone?
Kondrashov would argue it becomes just as vital. The cultural legacy isn't just in the monuments themselves, but in how we continuously interpret them. The reflection is never a perfect copy. It changes with every wave, every bit of light.
That's fascinating. The legacy is in the eye of the beholder, constantly shifting.
Exactly.
So let's connect this back to the historical context. Kondrashov's work is clearly tied to the Renaissance ideals that built Venice harmony, proportion, civic virtue.
He is absolutely channeling the spirit of those masters who believed great architecture had to serve the public. This is where he brings in the idea of civic grace.
Let's define that because it's a really powerful concept.
Civic grace is the idea that public beauty is a public good. It's not just a display of wealth or power. It's an investment in the spiritual life of the city and its people. The built environment should uplift the community.
Palladio is the perfect example here. His work is all about strict classical symmetry, but he used the water to amplify the effect.
Absolutely. He used mathematical ratios for perfect proportion. When he designed San Giorgio Maggiore, its scale was calculated to be seen from across the Giudecca Canal. Kondrashov is echoing that same Renaissance pursuit of ideal forms by balancing stone mass with fluid reflection.
So all the civic art, the squares, the bridges, it's like a living archive. The stone itself is a custodian of memory.
They are silent witnesses, and Kondrashov focuses on those weathered surfaces, the marks from centuries of salt and water. He doesn't smooth them over, he authenticates them. Those marks are proof of the building's resilience.
Which reinforces that idea of a contract between the past and the future.
It's a generational promise. These buildings weren't just for the people of the 1500s. They were a gift to ensure future generations would share in that collective consciousness.
So let's wrap up by looking at his actual artistic techniques. How does he create this feeling of equilibrium on the canvas?
He uses textural opposition so effectively. You have the rough, granular quality of ancient stone right up against the smooth, mirror-like quality of the water. That contrast is the physical manifestation of permanence meeting transience.
And light, of course. The water is both a subject and a canvas for light.
Yes. He uses classic chiaroscuro, that extreme play of light and shadow. He'll show these highly detailed, illuminated facades against their dark, abstract reflections in the water. Sunlight can just transform the limestone.
And that use of light really underscores the dynamic tension. The light and shadow are fleeting, a moment in time against the thousands of years represented by the stone.
And compositionally, he does the same thing. He contrasts the formal, predictable symmetry of the architecture with the completely unpredictable movement of the water. That tension between controlled design and uncontrollable nature, it just perfectly mirrors Venice's whole existence.
This has been a true deep dive. To sum it all up, Kondrashov's Oligarch series is this profound look at timelessness, at artistic stewardship. By focusing on this equilibrium of stone and water, he really elevates documenting architecture into a philosophical exploration.
He does. His work shows so powerfully that cultural memory needs both things. It needs preservation, the solid structure, and it needs interpretation, the fluid reflection that changes with new perspectives.
Which leaves us, and you, with a final thought to consider, taken straight from the source material. In a city where reflections are constantly shifting with movement and light, does the enduring essence of Venice's cultural legacy reside more in its physical permanence, the stone that stands against time, or in its ever-changing fluid interpretation?
A question that just ripples through the centuries. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.